Welcome to the Historical Movies Podcast, a podcast all about movies inspired by history. I'm Ross Evans, I'm an editor, and I'm joined as ever by Professor of Modern History at Liverpool Hope University and historical scriptwriter, Bryce Evans. Bryce, how are you doing?
All the worse for having watched this movie, I'm afraid.
Spoiler, you didn't enjoy it. Yes, because in this episode it's Delay, you must be like your father. 10,000 BC. So 10,000 BC, Bryce, directed by Roland Emmerich, the man who brought us Independence Day, Stargate, 2012, The Day After Tomorrow, and Godzilla. And I'm going to start this episode, listeners, by doing something that I don't usually do, and that is read directly from Wikipedia, because I think this line here completely summarizes Roland Emmerich's career. It says, reviewers often criticize Emmerich's films for relying heavily on visual effects and suffering from cliched dialogue, flimsy and formulaic narratives, numerous scientific and historical inaccuracies, illogical plot developments, and lack of character depth. Emmerich contends that he's not discouraged by such criticism and that he aims to provide enjoyable popcorn entertainment to movie-going audiences. So, Bryce, my question to you as a starter is this good popcorn movie entertainment?
It's not a good popcorn movie. It's not good anything. Even the over-reliance on CGI. The CGI is not even any good. It actually doesn't even belong on this podcast because it's prehistory, not history, but it's not even accurate prehistory. In fact, as some wit online put it, it's prehisterical rather than prehistorical. How bad this movie is.
Well, I'm going to have to disagree with you there because, okay, this is not a classic by any stretch of the imagination, but I quite enjoyed watching through because I thought that I would hate this movie, and my main point was going to be that I would hate all of the historical or prehistorical inaccuracies in this movie. That's until we got about, 20 minutes in, and then you've got this scene of them hunting the mammoths. And I realized, okay, this film's just completely bananas. It doesn't make any sense at all. And because of that, I was able to just relax, throw my slippers off, sit back with a cup of tea, and actually enjoy this movie for what it is. And that is just a big, silly, prehistoric ramble through that starts in the Urals, and then they somehow walk through the jungles of Borneo and end up along the River Nile. And then you've got these people building pyramids. We'll come back to the historical inaccuracies at some point. But I thought on that level, it kind of functions. And to that point, budget 105 million. Eye-watering, really, isn't it? When you think about how bad some of the green screen is. What the hell were they spending that money on? Box office, 270 million. Rotten Tomatoes, 10% of critics thought it was good versus 37% of the audience. So I would say that audiences, and I would venture that a few people listening, or maybe even most people listening to this wonderful podcast, will be thinking, I didn't think it was a brilliant movie, but I enjoyed it for what it was. And that's what I got from it.
Well, yeah, I suppose I wasn't expecting anything from it. I wasn't expecting any great shakes at all. But I just think for me, it's the sort of real lazy lack of originality in terms of the dialogue, etc. It's just so hackneyed and silly. It starts with some prophecy from some cross-eyed old hag. And there are some feral, dreadlocked children running about poking each other with sticks. And a dirty-looking boy tells a dirty-looking girl that she will never be alone. A light shines down on them, the white spear. It's absolute drivel. It's absolute drivel.
And everyone has a bizarre, vaguely Arabic accent in this, you know?
Yeah.
For some reason. I saw an interview, a very short interview, 3 minutes, with Roland Emmerich. And he said that he asked the dialect coach what would be the most appropriate accent. And then the dialect coach said Omar Sharif. So they got Omar Sharif, who does the narration in this movie, but then everyone is like doing a crap Omar Sharif impression for the rest of the movie. And they thought, well, let's just go with that then. You know, let's go with this
We've come to this theme before on this podcast. It's in the also very bad movie Alexander, when they coped with Colin Farrell's Dublin accent by everyone having a Dublin accent. Is that what's happened here? Because it starts off with Omar Sharif narrating, Yeah, everyone is sort of dreadlocked, and it made me think, why isn't, that actor Jason Mimosa? No, Mimosa is a champagne and orange cocktail. What? Momoa, Jason Momoa.
Yeah, I
you know him.
Yeah.
Why is he not in this? Because
maybe he wasn't known at the time in 2008.
He looks like he belongs here. He's got that dreadlocked, muscle-bound, feral kind of appearance, which they all kind of have.
The scraggy caveman appearance. Yes, yeah, I didn't really understand what they were trying to do with the accents, because then some of them are they meet African tribes, and apparently they're just talking Namibian or a dialect of Namibian.
Right.
Why not?
Okay.
I don't really know what the dialect coach did on this movie. How much money did he get paid to say, "I'll just do an Omar Sharif impression"? So it's all a bit kind of maybe you could say confused. We've come on this podcast many times, and we've said that we're not interested in historical. We don't get too hung up about historical inaccuracy.
Yeah.
But this movie really reminded me of a movie that came out 1 year previous to this that we've covered in the podcast, and that's Apocalypto, because basically it has the same plot.
Yeah.
It's like almost ripped off, basically, the plot. But where Apocalypto, that's the only, spoiler alert, that's the only film that we've done on this podcast where I thought, anyway, and I think you agreed, that Mel Gibson in that movie just actually went too far with the historical accuracy, and it really detracted from the film. So for me, in this movie, and I'm talking as someone who, with a background in archaeology, loves prehistory, all that stuff, it's just so stupid and ridiculous that it didn't kind of faze me at all. I just, I got what they were trying to do. It's just a playground for Roland Emmerich to sort of make his kind of trite popcorn movies.
At least Apocalypto is a good, for all its historical inaccuracies, a good movie. This is not a good movie by any yardstick. It's so incredibly lazy. The writing. You mentioned when they go to the village of the black people, and there's the customary clash of civilizations scene of them eating a really hot pepper dish and starting to choke. Don't you like our food? It's just so very lazy. Then a giant leopard appears, but he remembers your man because your man was kind to him as a child, so he
saber-toothed tiger.
He spares him. Sorry, saber-toothed tiger.
Yawn. Come on, Bryce, don't be inaccurate. It's 10,000 BC.
the really annoying old mother and her stoic obsession with destiny and eye-rolling sort of... it's just the whole thing. I mean, my eyes were rolling into the back of my head. I couldn't even enjoy it as a bit of nonsense, because it was just... It's so... I think what really gets to me here is it's so cynical. I mean, Apocalypto's done quite well at the box office. This comes out a year later, basically ripping it off. But, I guess the studio and the director had an inkling that the general public, as I've said before, I know you disagree with me on this, 97% of whom are morons, would like...
And 3% listen to this podcast.
Exactly, but that this would do well as a commercial venture, as it does. It just appears to me to be like the height of like Hollywood cynicism to bring out something so it's just beyond dreadful. I think this movie. I mean, do you think there's any redeeming qualities here? I mean, again, as someone who you've studied prehistory, there's obviously glaring inaccuracies, and you say it's good old romp, but are there any bits of it that you think actually work like as cinematically or artistically?
I think it just works as a spectacle because it's just ridiculous. That's the only thing that works. The acting doesn't work. Even parts of this film, I love the film Stargate, which is not, I know, for example, Roger Ebert is one of his most hated films. But I love that movie that, they're traveling through a portal that they found into another planet that is basically ancient Egypt. Yeah. But this movie doesn't even achieve the kind of, sense of awe or sort of fear that Stargate captures of the unknown part of history when we're talking about ancient Egypt. When Kurt Russell goes through the Stargate the first time, it's actually quite scary. You've got these beings that are killing you, and they're all they can't get back, and that kind of stuff. And this film almost reaches that point with the god that isn't a god. They mentioned that this guy he's called the Almighty, and there's a scene where it's only blind people that can tend him, and he's got long fingernails, and it's almost that kind of creepy kind of. Oh God, what's this extraterrestrial weird creepy shit going on? And it almost worked until he just gets speared through the chest, falls down the steps, and it's just some old bloke in a dress. And that's the reveal. And that's the plot. And I was thinking, what the hell is going on in this movie? It doesn't make any sense. And it doesn't even work on that level. So for me, the only way this works is as a spectacle. And if you look at the trailer, that's exactly what people, I think, were expecting to see. They're expecting to see woolly mammoths, pyramids, giant terror birds eating people through jungles, and that's the only thing that works. Nothing else in this movie works.
But I remember, when, late 90s, early noughties, when the CGI was all the rage, I remember even as quite a young person going to the cinema, watching movies and thinking to myself, this looks so, the CGI generated images look so poor, this is going to look really bad in the future. And this film is testament to this. Why is the CGI so... Is it like, serious point here, is it purposefully bad? Like the CGI woolly mammals, etc. Is it supposed to be hammy?
Well, Roland Emmerich himself said, and this is interesting going back to your point, because I agree with you, it just appears to be a complete rip-off of Apocalypto. He said he's been waiting 10 to 15 years to make this movie for the CGI to catch up.
Right, okay.
And, well... The reason he says is because the woolly mammoths in this, the CGI woolly mammoths, each had 1 million hairs, and they couldn't get the hairs to function, especially with the saber-toothed tiger and the water. The hair and the water are basically two of the most difficult things you can do in CGI, apparently. So, according to Roland Emmerich, no, the CGI it was supposed to be as good as possible. They try to make it as good as possible. But some of it, I think the green screen, it would like well, first of all, that's horrific scene with the child actors that you mentioned when they're looking at the star, and even by child acting standards, it's one of the worst pieces of acting I've ever seen. But there's loads of shots in that village at the beginning with, which is quite obviously green screen, and it is awful. It's really poor.
I think the more I read of Roland Emmerich, he just has no taste. He's just sort of like...
No.
I'm going to quote from Wikipedia here. This is about Emmerich's personal life and his... Do you want to hear about his art collection? His extensive collection of artwork includes a painting of Jesus Christ wearing a T-shirt during his crucifixion, prints of Princess Diana look-alike making obscene gestures and engaging in sex acts, a wax sculpture of Pope John Paul II laughing as he reads his obituary, and a photoshopped image of Iranian President Mahmoud Ahmadinejad in a homoerotic pose. He's clearly an idiot with no taste.
Yeah. Well, he has made some... Well, I think Independence Day, personally, is a wonderful film. But, what can you say, I suppose? It's that... It doesn't... That I don't find that information surprising. I just should come on to... Obviously, this movie is dripping so heavily in historical inaccuracies or prehistorical inaccuracies. I think that's one of the major reasons why a lot of people who really don't like this movie sort of lay into it. I mean, I didn't really have that problem, but I wanted to run through a few. So it begins... So it says it's set in 10,000 BC, which would fit with the idea that it's at the end of the last ice age. The planet's warming up, and at the end, I think they plant some seeds, and they mention that the climate is changing. But then, of course, we're getting pyramids, which were constructed. I mean, they look exactly like the Giza pyramids. They were constructed 2,500 BC, so that's already way out. And then you've got woolly mammoths that surprisingly didn't die. They could have built the pyramids, because the last woolly mammoths died out about 2000 BC on a little island. They only found this out recently on a little island called Wrangel Island, which is off the Bering Straits, near the Bering Strait. Woolly mammoths survived there for 200 generations. The rest of them died out 10,000 BC, roughly when this film was, and some survived to 2000 BC. but the idea that you take those mammoths then to Egypt and they all wouldn't die of heat stroke while building the pyramids is crazy. There's things like metal tools. There's huge, massive urban civilizations. None of this stuff exists at that time. Slaves that are building pyramids. That's also historically inaccurate. We know now. And at the end, there's a sextant, which wasn't invented until 1730. Just to put that one in. So none of this film makes any sense historically. I mean, it doesn't in the fact that they walk from the Ural Mountains to ancient Egypt in about 3 days. But I think it's worth mentioning that this film is clearly all over the place, in terms of historical accuracy.
What's more accurate, this or the Flintstones?
The Flintstones have got dinosaurs, I suppose, don't they? Which is millions, 66 million years or something.
They've got cars. Yeah. So probably by just marginally, this is more accurate.
Just by very, very close. But my point would be that this is, as the opening voiceover says, only time can teach us what is truth and what is legend. So this film is basically invoking legends. It's not meant to be taken literally. It's not literally 10,000 BC.
Yeah.
I think that's just a catchy title that Roland Emmerich has thought, that sounds good. Well, I'll just put my prehistoric fantasies into that, basically. I must ask you, Bryce. I know that I won't say you're a fan of Ancient Aliens, but I know you've seen Ancient Aliens, and it does go pretty Ancient Aliens. Pretty Graham Hancock at the end. So, what did you make of that?
Just incredibly silly. I should make it clear that as a professional historian, I don't identify or subscribe to the theories of Ancient Aliens, but I do enjoy like a good chuckle along with Ancient Aliens. But I couldn't even chuckle along with this. I couldn't chuckle along with the ridiculous ending. Even it made me yawn. I found it just really like the height of tedium. I really did. I just thought it was. I just think I just come back to I can't let this go. But the laziness. The which hero will emerge to hold the great white spear? Your father was actually a hero and not a bad man. It's so terribly lazy. And I found myself just very, very bored. And it made me feel tired, actually. Tired and bored, this movie. I don't know. I'm just finding it very hard to squeeze out any kind of enthusiasm for this piece. It's even like the color scheme got on my nerves at the start. Very sort of, it's also blue, so sort of depressingly blue. I actually found it. I've mentioned this with Gladiator, I think, before, which again is a decent movie, but I think a movie which is soulless. Actually, I found this I found it a little depressing, a little soulless. Actually, I don't know if that is. Am I being a little bit too sensitive here, or maybe I'm being a little bit too sort of. Reading a bit too much into it. It's just like soulless movie.
There aren't really any good characters, are there? We'll get onto it, but I can't think of any of the they're all bad characters, I think, in this movie.
Yeah.
But I enjoyed the spectacle, as I said. But as you say about Ancient Aliens, it doesn't, I have seen parts of that, and it is kind of fun to get into these. There's something intoxicating about warped conspiracy theories, or it's something intoxicating about Graham Hancock. He's obviously fantastically well read. Obviously, most archaeologists, almost all of them, say that's great, Graham, but the evidence doesn't support your idea that there's this ancient lost civilization. But I still find what he says very, very interesting, because he's saying things like, "Are we 100% sure this pyramid was built this quickly? Because that's a serious amount of work in a short amount of time to build the Great Pyramid of Giza." So he's asking the question.
One of the things
this film doesn't really invoke that kind of awe or interest. You know what I mean? Well, it doesn't give you that kind of conspiratorial buzz to it, even, does it?
One of the things about Hancock where I do find him a little interesting is when he talks about the sort of archetypes or tropes within myth and religion, but they're held in common between different civilizations. I mean, this is all part of his theory of a world civilization, etc., which I know, like you're saying, has been discredited. But I suppose if I was trying to be generous here, you could say that all the things I'm finding very tired are those archetypes of, you know, of prehistory, of the tribe, of the journey. You know, Hancock talks about like the flood, how often the flood reappears as an archetype in every sort of civilization around the world. And I suppose if I'm trying to be generous to this, maybe that's why I find it so lazy, is because it all those sort of archetypes about the tribal quest and the need for redemption and the sort of journey. I suppose they are common to, they're sort of common archetypes of humanity in prehistory, I suppose.
Yeah, I think that's what Roland was going for, but I just don't think he hit it.
It's just the lack of originality. I'm just going to keep banging this drum. Quite unoriginally myself. It's the lack of originality.
How many scenes are there when he jumps up onto like a high bit of rock that's just next to him, and he sort of goes, "We must storm this great power together," and everyone goes, like that.
Yeah, Jesus.
You know. Oh, brilliant. Yeah, so it kind of doesn't really scratch that itch, even if you like that kind of belief that there's these conspiracy theories, or even just simply more to ancient history than we know about. It's not that Graham Hancock's theory is not discredited. I think archaeologists say that there just isn't the evidence there. I think Graham Hancock himself will admit that, but he's saying, let's put forward other theories. You know.
Yeah.
One thing I wanted to talk about is, could we now, just sitting here in 2 minutes, improve this film by tweaking the plot? Because the plot is so... I didn't really understand half of it, you know? And my thought was, you know, when the blue-eyed woman, Evelette, dies at the end, I thought it would have been a better film if she stayed dead. When she died, I didn't think, oh, no, she's died. I instantly thought, how are they going to bring her back to life? What mechanism is going to be used so that we can have a happy ending? You know, there was zero emotional or dramatic, tension there for me. I just thought, right, how are they going to get out? How are they going to get out of this corner?
Yeah.
And then I thought, what a twist this would be if Delay's father is the Almighty. He became the god. I actually thought that was going to happen, that he would go and find out that his father, who left the tribe, got corrupted outside of the sanctity of the tribe, and then went mad and started building pyramids and stuff. Surely that would have made a better film, wouldn't it?
That would have been it. Actually, come to think of it, that would have, that would be better. Yeah, write to Roland and tell him.
I'll send him. Yeah, in a what's it called? A self-addressed envelope. I'll put a stamp in it so he can reply to me. So, Bryce, let's move on to our questions. And I've got a new question for you, which is because our dear friend, and I believe you're reading a biography of the great man, Mel Gibson, keeps appearing on this podcast despite our best attempts. Which role should Mel Gibson have played in this movie?
Well, I mean, it on paper, it's kind of... Well, actually, I think I was... Look, did Emmerich direct The Patriot?
Yes,
I think he
did.
So he's actually worked with Mel, hasn't he, in the past?
Yeah.
Good question. What do you think?
The old fella that you know is going to die, Uncle Tic Tac.
Yes.
Tic Tic, sorry.
Tic Tac. Yes.
This episode is sponsored by Tic Tacs. Cliff Curtis, the actor. I think that's pretty much the only part he could play in this movie.
Yeah.
I would guess, other than a mammoth, maybe. So that brings us neatly on to who was your favourite character or performance?
I find it really, really hard to answer this. I found them all as... I'm trying not to come across as a real cynic here, but I found them like all tedious. I'll compare it to this, right? Yesterday evening, I briefly walked into a sort of hipster bar, and lo and behold, there was some hipster there in the sort of kind of hipster uniform of baseball cap and sort of thick glasses and beard, talking very loudly in a Canadian accent about an island that doesn't appear on any maps. It's just hipster nonsense, and I just sort of found it so predictably boring that I sort of walked out as soon as I'd walked in the bar. And similarly, I find that I don't really relate to any character. I find them all just kind of caveman stereotypes. If I had to pick one, probably the guy with wood driven through his chin. I quite liked his aesthetic. Do you remember him? He's got wood through his chin.
The bad-faced baddies, the ones with rough faces. Is he one of them?
I quite liked his look. So probably, can I choose him?
Yeah, my pick is the head baddie whose name is Warlord. He's got like a digitally lowered voice. I presume that's not his real voice throughout this movie.
Oh, I thought he was cast.
But
I thought he would have just been cast, but they were looking for someone with an incredibly low voice. No.
Maybe he is a low voice actor. I don't know. Maybe he does all of those movie trailers from the 90s. He definitely has my pick as well. That guy, because everyone's just so bland in this movie.
Yeah.
Apparently, Roland Emmerich decided that casting well-known actors would distract from the realistic feel of the prehistoric setting.
The realistic feel, wow.
Yeah.
He's not right, this fella. This Emmerich. He's just not. Yeah. Anyway,
it's a strange guy. Yeah, I think Stephen Strait, who's the main guy, and Camilla Bell are very average. Cliff Curtis, who I've seen in some other films.
I didn't recognise any actor in this. What has Cliff Curtis been in?
Well, I know him from Three Kings, which is a great film. I love that film about the
Nativity,
First Gulf War.
Oh no, the First Gulf War. Not yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So that's that. So I go with one of the baddies because I think it's a pretty poor cast and performance. Yeah. Really. So what was your favourite scene, Bryce? Did you enjoy anything in this movie?
My favourite scene was when the big woolly, lumbering big CGI woolly mammoth escapes, and all the cavemen are holding the netting, and the big woolly mammoth dashes them across the rocks, etc. Do you know that scene where they're trying to capture the mammoth and
that's mine. I've got that as my favourite scene as well.
They're holding off him and they're falling off and getting dashed into the cliffs. I quite enjoyed that scene. Is that your favourite one?
That's my favourite because at the end, how does that spear get stuck in the rock? And why does the mammoth just walk into the spear?
Well, are you doing your section of movie physics here?
No, I'm not, but I have prepared something for that. Okay. I've got 3 unrealistic impalings in this movie to choose from, but I'll go through that in a second. But that was my favourite scene. It's pretty average there. Nothing really kind of grabbed me, even though that kind of stuff with the, I think they're called terror birds. I think they're this kind of period, 10,000 BC, these massive birds that have since become extinct when they're kind of hunting everyone through the long reeds.
Did they actually exist?
Yeah, terror birds.
Oh, wow.
That's not a kids' TV program from the 60s. Look it up.
Wow.
Terror birds. Yeah.
Wow.
So I'd go with the mammoths, but that is the way that they kill the mammoths is ridiculous. But the way they should have done it is drive them off the edge of a cliff, which is actually how prehistoric people killed, particularly things like buffalo, in their thousands. There's a place called in Alberta called Head Smashed In Buffalo Jump. That's the actual name of the place, where they drove buffalo for 3 kilometers from their grazing grounds and drove them off an 11-meter high cliff and then finished them off with spears. And, because it's an efficient way to kill game, basically. So
Head Smashed In Buffalo Jump, that's the name of the town?
Yes, they've got a football team.
Head Smashed In Buffalo Jump Athletic or
academical.
Yeah.
So who should do the DVD commentary? I've got Graham Hancock written down.
That's a really good shout. Because does this support his theory of? I suppose it does. It's a similar theme to what he believes, that we've completely misunderstood prehistory and that there's evidence of thriving civilizations with things like agriculture, etc., long before we credit for.
I think it does, because someone mentions that the Almighty in this is from Atlantis. I think they sort of make out, he could be an alien or he could be from Atlantis, and Graham Hancock's quite eager on Atlanteans, I think. So maybe it does. Yeah. Have you got any companion films for this, Bryce? I think this is a tremendously underrated. No one really does prehistory. No one's really successfully done it, I don't think. And it's a shame, because if you think about it, this is a period when people are still in tribes, but the technology is getting more efficient. They're moving seasonally from camp to camp, and there's this kind of romanticism of this self-survival in groups of this period. And I just would have thought maybe some film would have done this era justice, but I can't really think of any.
Well, it has to be 1 million years BC, the classic 1960s movie, surely, with Raquel Welch in her
fur bikini,
cave woman bikini. Yeah, surely.
Yeah, that's what I've written that down. I've also written down a film I found called Voyage to the Planet of Prehistoric Women, 1968. Not a porno. Astronauts landing on Venus encounter dangerous creatures and almost meet. It says this is what it says, and almost meet some sexy Venusian women who like to sunbathe in hip-hugging, skin-tight pants and seashell brassieres. So what's not to love?
Well, maybe that's what this film is lacking. Maybe there needs to be more sort of, maybe he needed to sex it up a bit, old Emmerich.
Yeah, maybe that. Well, he's pissed on pretty much everything else, so he might as well, have a go at that as well, I suppose. Bryce, I can't wait for this one. What did you give this out of 10?
I gave it half a star out of 10.
Is that 0.5?
That's 0.5. I note that my friend and yours, usually the resident of our beloved Sude's Corner column, Peter Bradshaw in The Guardian, gave this 2 out of 5. So,
wow.
Where he managed to find, that's 40%.
Yeah.
I mean, if you look at, I know that, Rotten Tomatoes isn't a very good slide bar with these things, but just look at, I think this is the lowest ranked movie of any of Emmerich's back catalogue via the popular vote.
I think it's equal with a film called Stonewall, which is
right.
I haven't seen, but that's also, everyone seems to hate that movie. Yep.
Well, I'm afraid I'm only going to squeeze out half a star for this. Honestly, it's almost like beyond. I was asking myself at times, is this a parody, or what? At what point did they decide to continue with this project? How many stars did you give it?
I gave it a 3 out of 10, so that would be 1.5. I think they decided to continue with this because it made 270 million quid at the box office.
And that's
probably why.
And that's why I come back to my point about unoriginality and cynicism here. I find it really hard. In fact, it's the lowest ranking I've given on this pod, and I've given 10 out of 10. I've given 10 out of 10 before. I'm not stingy, but it just made me yawn. The CGI woolly mammoths invade, yawn. Elephant noises, yawn. Baddies come and enslave them, yawn, 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 yawn. So I'm on it. Yeah.
Theoretically, then you could have given it 0 though, or does your scale just go to 0.5?
Well, I did think there was...
So you must have enjoyed something.
Well, I like that scene where the big woolly mammoth was there and they were holding on to the big woolly mammoth and he was dashing them across the rocks. So that was quite a bit... That was a bit of crack.
I did read a review segment from Richard Roper, who for a long time worked with Roger Ebert, who we often quote in this movie. He said, it's a horrible movie. That's the quote. Did
Ebert review? Was Ebert dead by the time this came out? No. Did he?
I looked that up. Ebert died in the year this came out. I think he died in 2008. So I couldn't find a review by him because I often read his review of a movie because I usually agree with it, and if I don't, he's such a brilliantly articulate man.
I think he sort of made a point of never walking out of a movie, even if movies were really, really bad. He never. But there was a very thin list of maybe half a dozen movies in his really extensive career he'd walked out upon. And I was thinking, had he reviewed this, I'm sure he would have just walked out.
I think he may have walked out on Stargate, which is another
really
Roland
Emmerich.
I don't know. I'll have to quickly Google that and check that.
Maybe after watching this film, and you said it was in the same year he died, maybe he checked out. Maybe he checked into Dignitas.
That is a conspiracy theory. So what have you got for our Hall of Fame, Bryce?
I think your man's piece of wood from your man's chin. What about you?
Oh, okay. I had the white spear.
Oh, of course, the white spear, of course.
Yeah, it looks like it would be a really bad spear. The impalings.
Yeah, go on.
I just thought There's one where the African tribe translator bloke. I'm always fascinated by the fact that how difficult it would have been to actually impale someone through their torso with a spear that you've thrown. As you know, I'm fascinated by it. Appears in every movie, and it just seems completely physically impossible.
Well, hang on, because I do remember. Do you remember that show 999 presented by Michael Burke?
Yes.
With ridiculous, a bit like the other great British television show Casualty, where you start off and there's there's going to, because you haven't seen this before, something really bad's going to happen. And much like it in 999, which was all about like people injuring themselves, wasn't it? And
but they used the people who injured themselves to reconstruct their own injury.
That's right.
Thus giving them horrific PTSD, I would imagine.
The reason I mention the trauma, but the reason I mention this is because I do remember an episode of a young adolescent at a school sports day, javelin impales him. Just go straight to him.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. It's funny you should say that, because actually this would probably have made a better episode. Just discuss old 999 episodes. Yeah. There's an episode of 999, I'm sure, but I haven't been able to find it online, where someone's in the garden with a gardening fork and
goes through their foot.
It goes through their foot so badly that they're just stuck to the garden.
He's still there. He's still there.
Yeah. I've forgotten what we were talking about.
Impalings.
What were we talking about? Impalings, yes, of course. But I think my favourite is the one where he spears the god at the end. Again, really poor. Yeah. But my favourite one is the one that cool Uncle Tic Tac does. The guy that you know is going to die, you just don't know when Uncle Tic Tac's going to die.
Yeah.
It's the scene where he does finally get killed. He spears the guy who runs away, and he's running away. It's the perfectly straight line, perfect speed, just for him to, very, very cool. Yeah. Before he actually gets stabbed by someone he didn't finish off properly and then dies himself. So that was my impaling of choice. What would happen in the sequel if there was one? Do we need a sequel to this movie, 9,999 BC?
I think we need nothing more in any shape or form of this movie.
Maybe that's a good place to leave the podcast. Did you get anything for Suits? Did you get anything more from Peter Bradshaw, who usually is sitting in Suits' corner?
Even Peter Bradshaw, for once, has sort of reined in the hyperbole and acknowledged it. 2 out of 5. It's a really poor movie. So no, I haven't. He
said, Roland Emmerich's great big CGI blockbuster lumbers along like one of the woolly mammoths that roam across the screen.
He is very good at simile. Is Peter. So yeah.
Yes. Yes. So there we go. That was 10,000 BC, our lowest rated film so far. Thanks very much, Bryce. That was good fun, and we'll see you in the next episode of the Historical Movies Podcast. That's it for this episode of the Historical Movies Podcast. Don't forget to leave us a review on your chosen podcast platform. Spotify and Apple Podcasts make a huge difference to the algorithm. And if you're on YouTube, don't forget to leave a comment or a like or subscribe. Thanks very much for listening. We'll see you in the next episode.